The job posting said entry-level communications specialist, which is a way of saying nobody else wanted the overnight shift. That's me. I took it. The St. Louis County 911 Communications Center is on the third floor of a building off Grand Avenue in Duluth. The elevator smells like old coffee. The room itself is smaller than I expected, maybe 30 feet across. But it's packed. 12 consoles in 3 rows, each one a tower of monitors and a tangle of cables held together with zip ties somebody put there years ago and never removed. The screens never go fully dark. Even at 4 in the morning when calls slow down, there's always something blinking. The overhead lights run a shade cooler than regular fluorescence, that blue-white that makes everyone look tired even when they're not. I remember standing at the door on my first night thinking this is a lot of screens for one room. Donna Estrada found me at the door and didn't waste time. 40-something dark hair back in a ponytail, thin rectangular glasses, a lanyard of keycards around her neck that rattled whenever she moved. She pointed me to Console 4 and walked me through the call logging software in about 15 minutes. The system was called Zetron. She went through it like she'd done it 500 times, which she probably had. One step, then the next. She didn't ask if I had questions. She just watched to see if I'd keep up. I kept up. Captain Sutton came over at some point. Rodney Sutton, watch supervisor. 6'1", broad through the chest. Close-cropped gray hair, the kind of face that looks like it's been making the same expression for 30 years. He had me sign in on a paper log, old school, actual paper, and then he handed me a laminated card the size of an index card. "Read this," he said. That was it. He walked back to his desk. 5 protocols on the card. The first 3 were normal. Escalate medical calls if the caller goes silent. Don't patch family members through to active fire scenes. Flag calls past 90 seconds with no new information. Standard stuff. I'd read versions of all 3 in the training packet they'd mailed me before my start date. The last 2 were different. Protocol 4. If I experienced a gap in time I couldn't account for, I was to notify the watch supervisor immediately and leave the floor. Protocol 5. Do not open the gray cabinet by Console 6, under any circumstances. I looked up. Sutton was already at his desk. Donna was typing something. Nobody was watching me read it. I went back to Protocol 4. The wording was careful. Gap in time you cannot account for. Not if you feel confused or if you get disoriented. Specific language, the kind legal teams sign off on. I figured somebody had a medical episode on shift at some point. Passed out, lost 20 minutes, woke up still on a live call. That kind of thing happens. Made sense, as a liability measure. The cabinet rule I didn't think much about. Every workplace has one. Don't touch the server in the back room. Don't open the panel behind the break room fridge. I filed it and moved on. 2 weeks later, I thought about both of them a lot more. The shift that mattered was a Tuesday. I was 2 weeks in, which meant I'd stopped flinching at every incoming call and started actually listening. Donna still sat close, but she'd stopped narrating everything I did. Captain Sutton was at the back desk doing paperwork. Shane Gutierrez, another trainee, was 2 consoles over working the radio channel. Shane talked fast and louder than the room needed, but he was good at the job. We didn't talk much. That was fine. After 2 in the morning, the calls dropped off. Donna had told me on the first night that 2 to 4 was usually the quiet window, and she was right. Radio traffic thinned out. The room got quieter except for the equipment hum from the racks along the back wall. I was reviewing a flagged call from earlier in the shift when my screen lit up. Payphone. The number logged as a Holiday gas station on Central Entrance. I'd driven past that Holiday probably 100 times. It's got a broken letter on the sign, the second L, so it just says Ho-I-Day. I always notice it. I picked up. St. Louis County 911, what's your emergency? Man's voice. Middle-aged, I'd guess, though payphones distort everything. He said there was a crash on I-35. mile marker 247. He paused and coughed. Then he said there were 2 vehicles and one was on its side. He gave it to me in short pieces with the cough between each one. I logged it while he talked. Dispatched emergency response to I-35 at mile marker 247, got confirmation, closed the call. The whole thing took maybe 90 seconds. Donna nodded. Not a big nod. The small one that meant I'd done it right. I kept working. At 3 o'clock exactly, my screen lit up again, same number. The holiday payphone on central entrance. I figured it was a follow-up. Sometimes callers phone back to add something they forgot, or they get scared and want to know if help is coming. I picked up. Same voice. Same crash on I-35. Same mile marker 247. He paused and coughed in the same place. Then the second detail. Then another cough. Then the part about the vehicle on its side. Word for word. Pause for pause. The cough landed in the exact same spot. I finished the call. Donna was already looking at my screen. That was the same call, I said. Tag it RPT 60, she said. Repeat caller 60-minute window, then close it. I typed the tag, hit end call, watched the line drop from the active queue. Except it didn't drop. The line stayed on my screen. Status bar still read active. I checked the timer in the corner. It was sitting at 60 seconds exactly, not counting up, just sitting. The audio meter, the small bar graph that jumps when there's sound on the line, kept moving, slow twitches, not a flat line, not dead air. Something was still going. I looked at Donna. She was looking at the screen too. The timer didn't move. The meter kept twitching. That was it. 60 seconds on the clock, and something still on the other end. Sutton showed up maybe 2 minutes later. He did this slow walk across the floor, hands behind his back, checking screens like he was doing inventory. Got to mine and stopped. He looked at the timer, looked at the meter, looked at me. Recorder glitch, he said. Happens on the Tuesday overnight. Write it up. That was it. Recorder glitch. I wanted to mention that recorder glitches don't usually come with the audio meter still moving, but Sutton was already halfway across the room. Donna gave me a look that wasn't quite agreement and wasn't quite the other thing. She slid a blank incident form across the desk. I'm not great at writing those. The form wanted specific language. Incident type, time of occurrence, console number, equipment involved. I put console 4, timer freeze, audio meter activity, post disconnect, and felt pretty confident that covered nothing useful. Sutton signed off on it without reading past the first line. I filed it in the yellow tray and went back to the queue. The next hour was quiet. A couple of non-emergency transfers, a noise complaint somewhere off London Road. I answered them, logged them, handed them off. Normal stuff. The kind of shift where you start watching the clock every 20 minutes just to confirm time is still moving. Then the call came in. Not the payphone. Internal line. Sutton picked it up at the supervisor's station, and I watched his face do something I hadn't seen it do yet. It went still. Not calm still. More like the kind of still that happens when someone tells you something, and you're working out whether to believe it. He came over. State Patrol called back. Sergeant Wang, Duluth Post. I waited. No crash at 247, I said. What? No crash, no vehicle, no scene. Wang ran the mile marker himself. Donna had stopped typing. I pulled up the dispatch record. The first call, the one I'd taken before 2. I found it in the log and just looked at it. The timestamp read 300. 3 a.m. even. That's wrong, I said. I took that call before 2. I know I did. It was quiet. I remember because I'd just finished the noise complaint. I checked. That was logged at 2:03. Sutton looked at the screen. He didn't say anything right away. The dispatch is at 3, Donna said, quietly, not arguing, just stating it. I took it before too, I said. I remember it. Nobody said anything for a second. The room kept humming. Across the floor, Shane Gutierrez was on a call, nodding, making notes. Normal Tuesday, normal 2 a.m. stuff. Except I had apparently lost an hour and didn't know it. That part bugged me a little. Donna said, Rule 3. I remembered Rule 3. If you lose time, notify the watch supervisor. I'd sort of done that by saying it out loud, which felt like maybe half credit. Sutton gave a single nod and pulled a chair to the side of my console. Pull the recording, he said. I pulled it. The file was there, time-stamped at 3, duration listed as 60 seconds. I double-clicked, and it opened in the playback window. Donna reached into the drawer under the desk and handed me a spare headset, the kind with foam ear cushions that smelled like someone's old coffee. And I put it on. I hit play. First thing I heard was the line connecting, then breathing, then the voice. Male, older, flat. He said there was a crash on I-35, mile marker 247, and paused and coughed. The cough landed right where I expected before I understood why I expected it. Some part of my brain was already tracking the pattern. Then the next detail. Another cough. The vehicle on its side. And then the response voice. I didn't recognize it right away. Honest version. It took me maybe 5 seconds before I understood the dispatcher on the recording was supposed to be me. The words were right. My words, my responses, the way I'd asked for location. But the rhythm was off. Like someone had read transcripts of my calls and practiced from those. Technically correct, just not right. I scrubbed back to the beginning and played it again. The caller's breathing was identical, not similar. Identical. Every inhale before the cough landed in the same frame. I scrubbed forward, back, forward again. Same spot every time, like a sample dropped into place. The voice that was supposed to be mine kept going, asking the right questions the wrong way. Donna watched the playback counter from her chair and didn't say anything. The caller finished his report. Then there was a pause. Longer than I remembered. I'd heard this call twice before the recording, and I didn't remember a pause there. Then the caller said, "Thank you, Owen." I pulled the headset off. Not fast, not like I'd been startled. I just took it off, set it on the desk, and sat there. I hadn't told him my name. I don't say my name on calls. I give the call sign and the console number, that's it, standard. The caller had my name, and I had not given it to him. Donna was watching me. "He said my name," I said. She nodded once, like she'd been expecting that sentence. I put the headset back on and played it from the start again. I needed to hear it twice. I wasn't going to be the guy who caught one thing in a recording and built a whole case on it. I heard it twice. Third time I scrubbed straight to the pause near the end and listened from there. The pause. Then Owen. Then the line clicked. A single sharp click, clean, like a latch releasing. I sat there with the headset still on. My own voice that didn't sound like me. A caller who had my name without me giving it. An hour I couldn't account for. And a sound at the end of the recording that I was already associating with a gray cabinet 12 feet to my left, which was probably not a great sign for how the rest of the shift was going to go. The headset hummed. Donna was still there. The floor kept running. 4 o'clock hit and the payphone number lit up my screen again. I recognized it before I finished reading it. Central Entrance Holiday. Same 7 digits. I picked up, tagged it, and the man was already talking. Same crash. Same mile marker. The cough came in the same spot, like a bookmark he'd set himself. I let him finish the report, said I was dispatching, tagged at RPT 60, and ended the call. The call didn't end. It sat in my active queue like it was waiting for something. I ended it again. Still there. I hit the clear button 3 times, which I know is not a protocol thing, it was just reflex. The timer had stopped at 60 seconds exactly. The audio meter was twitching again, not a lot, just enough to tell me there was still something on the line. I flagged Donna. She came over, looked at my screen, and didn't say anything for a second. Then, tag it and leave it. I already tagged it. Then leave it. She went back to her station. I kept watching the queue. The call didn't clear. At 4:12, a new call came in. Different number. I looked it up later. Super 8 on Miller Hill. I picked up and there was a half-second of dead air, which is normal. People panic and forget to talk. And then the man started speaking. Same crash. Same mile marker, 247. The cough came in exactly the same place. I looked at the payphone entry still sitting in my active queue. Both calls were open at the same time. The same voice coming from two different phones, 12 minutes apart. Same words in the same order. I tagged the Super 8 call, RPT 60, and ended it. It also did not clear. Now I had two sitting there. Both timers frozen at 60 seconds. Both audio meters twitching in the same rhythm, slow and even, like they were breathing. Sutton was behind me before I noticed him. I don't know how long he'd been standing there. He's quiet for a big guy. Arms crossed, just watching the screens. I didn't say anything. He didn't say anything. We both looked at the two open calls. Then he said, "Don't tag a third one the same way." "There's only been two," I said. "I know." He pulled a chair from the empty console behind me and sat. Not right next to me, just close enough to see my screen. "How much did Estrada tell you about the repeaters?" "She mentioned them once." He made a sound that wasn't quite a word. "We've been dealing with them since last fall. October, maybe November." He looked at the Super 8 entry. Started with one number. Payphone on the south end. Same report, same voice, same everything. We figured it was a compulsive caller, someone with a condition. He paused. Then it started coming from different numbers. Same voice? Same voice. I looked at the two frozen timers. The dispatchers who listened past 60 seconds. He didn't answer right away. "You said they got pulled in," I said. "What does that mean?" Sutton looked at the wall for a second. Then, "They lose time, like you did tonight." He said it the way you'd tell someone the coffee machine was running slow. "We had a dispatcher in November who stayed on a call for 4 minutes. Thought she was handling a real emergency. Logged 3 responses that didn't exist. Couldn't account for the shift after 2 a.m. He uncrossed his arms. "She's on leave." I sat with that. "The 60-second tag," I said. "That's what the card is for." "Yes." "The timer freezing. That's not a glitch." He looked at my screen. "No. The line holds. It doesn't want to release." He said that like it was also a maintenance issue. I actually appreciated the tone. Made it easier to not completely fall apart at my desk. I'd been thinking of the frozen timer as a software problem since Sutton first mentioned it, but I was thinking about it differently now. 60 seconds was the rule on the laminated card. The line was stopping exactly at 60. Not 58, not 63. Exactly at 60 and then just holding, waiting for me to stay on. That's what it was doing. I didn't say that out loud because I didn't have a way to say it that didn't make me sound like I needed to go home. But I was pretty sure Sutton already knew. The two entries sat in my queue. I kept looking at them. Here's the thing about being a temp. You don't have the leverage that full-timers have. If something goes sideways on your shift and there's no paper trail, it becomes your problem fast. I'd seen it at the warehouse. Something breaks. The temp was the last one near it. Suddenly the temp's at fault. I wasn't going to let this shift turn into that. I had 2 frozen call entries, a non-existent crash, an hour I couldn't explain, and a recording of a voice that sounded like mine but wasn't. I needed something I could hold on to. My keychain was in my jacket pocket under the console. I've got one of those flat thumb drives on it. Came in a 4-pack from Target. 4 gigabytes. I've had it for probably 2 years. I use it for exactly nothing. I think I put a resume on it once in case I needed to print somewhere and forgot it was there. I grabbed the jacket, found the drive. I pulled up the call log and opened the audio file for the original entry. Plugged the drive into the port on the side of my console. The system accepted it. Soft chime, small icon in the corner of the screen. I dragged the file over. Transfer bar crossed in about 4 seconds. I ejected the drive. Then I looked at my screen. The waveform was gone. The audio file was still listed in the log, but where the waveform had been was a flat line, completely flat, like the file was empty. I clicked it. Nothing played. The meter didn't move. The overhead lights flickered, just once, maybe half a second. Then they came back on. The room looked the same consoles, same screens, same Donna at her station, Shane at his. But the light was off, a shade brighter than it had been, and it made everything look a little more exposed, like someone had turned up a setting I hadn't known was adjustable. I looked at the drive in my hand. The audio was on it. The file on the system was gone, or empty, or whatever had happened to it. But I'd made the transfer before that. I had the recording, my own voice with the wrong cadence. A caller who knew my name without being told. The click at the end. If anyone tried to tell me this shift had gone fine, I had something to show them. I closed my hand around the drive and put it in my jacket pocket. The 2 call entries were still open in my queue. The audio meters still twitching. The light stayed at that new brightness. I sat back down and faced the console. Whatever the repeaters were, and I had a lot of questions about that word and what Sutton actually meant by it. They'd been working through phones all night. Pay phones, motel lines, the center's own recording system. All of that was the line. One side of something. I'd just pulled something out of that line and put it in my pocket. I kept that thought at the edge of my mind and didn't look at it directly. There was still almost 2 hours left in the shift. The floor kept running. I kept my hands on the keyboard and watched the cue. The clock on the wall above console 4 said 1:47. I'd looked up because I was tired and doing the mental math on how much shift was left. My brain did the subtraction and got confused. I looked again. Still 1:47. The second hand was moving, not stuck, just wrong. My phone said 5:12. I set the phone face down and looked at the clock again. 1:47. The second hand ticked to 1:48. Donna was at the supervisor station with her lanyard hanging forward over the keyboard, typing something. Shane had his headset on and was reading an address off to someone. Calm, totally normal. Nobody looked at the clock. Nobody looked at me. 3 hours were gone, roughly. 5:12 minus 1:47 is 3:25. I hadn't felt anything. No gap, no drowsiness. No moment where I'd zoned out and caught myself. 1 second I was watching the cue. Now it was 3 hours later, and the wall said it wasn't. Rule 4. If you lose time, notify the watch supervisor immediately and leave the floor. I didn't want to tell Sutton. That felt like the thing that made it real and official and something that got written down next to my name. But I remembered what he'd said earlier about dispatchers who listen past 60 seconds. Something about getting pulled in. I didn't know exactly what that meant, and I still don't. What I did know was that I'd been sitting at a console with 2 frozen calls for most of a shift, and if that counted as listening past 60 seconds, I'd probably been getting pulled in for a while without knowing it. I found Sutton near the back of the room by the printer. He was looking at a sheet of paper. I lost time, I said. Low, not making a production of it. He looked up. His face didn't change. How much? Clock says 1:47. My phone says 5:12. You checked both? Yeah. He folded the paper once and tucked it under his arm. Okay, come with me. The hallway was behind the supervisor station through a door that needed his badge. No cameras back there. I noticed that right away. Low ceiling, one fluorescent tube, dark, walls painted a gray-green that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 90s. A folding chair against one wall. A fire extinguisher. Nothing else. The floor hum didn't reach back here. Quiet enough that I could hear Sutton breathing. He stood with his back to the door and looked at me. "You're doing fine," he said, which was a strange thing to say to someone who'd just lost 3 hours. "Okay," I said. "It's a side effect. The calls do it. Not to everyone, but some people." He didn't elaborate on what it was a side effect of, and I didn't push. I was still turning over the 3-hour gap, trying to find the seam of it. Then his radio went off. Badge radios make a specific sound before a transmission. A chirp, then a click, then the voice. His made that sound. And the voice that came out of it was his. Same flat, unhurried tone. Same Midwestern flatness I'd been listening to all night. It said, "Crash reported on I-35 at mile marker 247. Requesting access to the gray cabinet at console 6. Sutton looked at the radio on his belt. He didn't answer it. He just looked at it for a second, then clipped it back. Didn't say anything for a moment. "That was your voice," I said. "Yeah. Coming out of your radio." "Yeah." He didn't sound rattled. He sounded like a man who'd heard it before and didn't love hearing it again. That's been happening since October. They figured out the radio band at some point. Run through it the same way they run through the phone lines. "What's in the gray cabinet?" I said. He looked at me. "You've seen it." "I've seen it. I want to know what's in it." He crossed his arms. "Old patch panels. Wiring from before the system upgrade. And a breaker. Cuts the outside trunk lines. Every call coming in from outside the building, it kills it." That sounded like the obvious move. "So why don't you flip it?" "Because opening the cabinet pulls them closer." He said it the way he said everything. Flat. Like it was a policy you had to accept whether you liked it or not. "We don't know exactly why. County thinks it's the physical space. Old wiring, the panels themselves. Every time that cabinet's been opened, the activity on the floor spikes. More calls. Louder. Time losses get longer." He paused. "We keep it locked." The radio chirped again. Same click. His voice came back. "Requesting access to the gray cabinet at console 6. Identical. Word for word. Same half-beat pause before gray. Same slight drop at the end. Sutton reached over and turned the volume knob down to nothing. "They find something that works and they run it back," he said. I'd heard that request before. Not from the radio. From the replay. The click at the end of the recording. I'd assumed it was just a sound from wherever the caller was standing. A door somewhere. I hadn't thought about what door or what it was opening toward. Standing in that hallway listening to Sutton's voice come out of Sutton's radio asking for one specific cabinet, I started to think the click was never random. It was always pointing at the same place. I didn't say that out loud. Sutton said we should get back to the floor. Shane was at his console when we came through the door, one hand on his headset, other hand on his mouse. Normal. Then he looked up, saw me, and waved me over. Not a greeting. More of a hey-come look. I walked to console 6. He pointed at the gray cabinet. It was a standard metal cabinet, about chest height, mounted to the wall just to the right of the console. Gray paint, a little scuffed at the corners. Latch handle centered on the door. I'd walked past it probably 15 times since my first shift and registered nothing about it. The latch handle was moving. Not a lot. Just a 1/4 inch in one direction, then stopping. Then a 1/4 inch back, then stopping. Patient, methodical, testing the give. Shane said quiet. Started about 2 minutes ago. I watched it. The handle shifted. Stopped. Shifted back. The air around console 6 smelled like cold cigarette smoke. Not fresh, old smoke. The kind that's worked into fabric over a long time. The same smell that had come off the holiday payphone call. I hadn't placed it then. I was placing it now. The recording, the click at the end of it. I'd figured it for a door somewhere on the caller's end. Background noise, nothing significant. But the caller had used my name without being given it, and every version of that call had circled back to the same request. The cabinet, his voice on Sutton's radio asking for it. The click, the same click at the end of the audio. It wasn't from wherever the caller was standing. It was this latch. I was almost certain. Same sound, same weight to it. The handle shifted again and held for a second before releasing. Whatever was on the other side wasn't panicking. It was just working at it steadily, the way you'd test a lock you expected to open sooner or later. I kept my eyes on the handle and didn't move. Sutton got called off the floor around 5:30, some radio request from a unit on the north end. I didn't catch the specifics because I was still watching the cabinet handle. He said he'd be back in 2 minutes, maybe 3, and then he was through the door at the back of the room and gone. I waited about 4 seconds, which is not a defense. I know how that sounds, but I want to be clear about what I told myself right then because I've turned it over a few times since, and I think I actually believed it. I was going to open it just far enough to see inside. Confirm there was something mechanical, a vibrating panel, a loose hinge, something that explained the movement, and then I was going to lock it and write it up and let Sutton handle it. That was the full plan. Follow the card after that. The laminated card said don't open it. I know. It was in my back pocket. I slid the latch anyway. The door swung inward maybe 6 inches before it caught. Then I pushed it the rest of the way. It opened quiet. No creak, no resistance. The kind of quiet that means it's been opened before, more than once, and the hinges have broken in. There was no wiring. I don't know exactly what I'd pictured. Patch panels, Sutton had said, a breaker. The back wall of the cabinet was flat gray metal. Nothing mounted to it. No bundle of cables running anywhere. Just one shelf, roughly chest height, running the full width of the interior. Maybe 18 inches of clearance between the shelf and the back wall. On the shelf, a row of cassette tapes. Standard size, the old kind. The ones with paper labels. Maybe a dozen of them, standing upright in a plastic rack. The cheap kind. The kind you'd find at a Goodwill for $2. Sitting between the VHS tapes and the jigsaw puzzles. The labels were handwritten. I couldn't read the writing from where I was standing. Next to the rack sat a cordless phone handset. Chunky and off-white, the retractable antenna still attached, the earpiece facing me. Looked like something out of a 1994 kitchen. On the back wall, about eye level, a red LED, small, blinking. I watched it for a second. Then I checked my pulse, 2 fingers to the inside of my wrist the way they walked us through in the CPR refresher at my last warehouse job. The LED was blinking at the same rate. Not roughly, not close, exactly the same. That part bugged me a little. I almost backed up right there, almost closed it and pretended I hadn't seen anything, but then I went for my jacket pocket. I'd been carrying the thumb drive since I exported the audio, checking it every 20 minutes the way you keep touching your keys when you're not totally sure you grabbed them, and my pocket was empty. I checked both jacket pockets, both front pockets on my jeans, the front pocket on my hoodie. Nothing. The thumb drive was on the shelf. It was lying flat between the tape rack and the handset. I hadn't put it there. I had not set it on that shelf. I'd had it on me since before 4 in the morning, and I was certain of that. I reached in and picked it up anyway. It was warm. Not ambient temperature warm. Warm like it had been sitting in someone's closed hand. I set it back down. I don't totally know why, just did. The handset was breathing. Low, barely there. The kind of sound you'd call line noise if you weren't paying attention. But it had a rhythm, in and out, steady, patient. Whatever was on the other end of that handset wasn't in a hurry. I didn't pick it up. Behind me, Shane was still on his headset, working through something. I could hear him asking a caller to repeat an address, the kind of flat repetition you do when the connection's bad. The room was otherwise quiet. Donna was at her console, typing. Nobody was looking at console 6. The speaker panel on the console, the one built into the desk surface, the one that routes active calls when you're off headset, made a soft click, like it was trying to open a channel, then another click, and then nothing. I looked over at Shane's screen without stepping away from the cabinet. He had an incoming call flagged. The caller ID field showed a number I knew because it was my number, my personal cell. The phone was in my jacket pocket, not in my hand, not dialing a thing. But there it was on his screen, ringing in, my name above it. Shane frowned at it. He looked at the number and then looked at me. Not alarmed, just puzzled, the way you'd look at someone who texted you from across the table instead of just saying the thing out loud. "That you?" he said. "No," I said. He let it ring. I turned back to the cabinet. LED blinking, handset breathing. Shane's screen still lit up with my number going unanswered. I thought about what Sutton had told me in the hallway. Not the part about the cabinet, the earlier part, about the repeaters, about dispatchers who listened past 60 seconds getting pulled in. I'd listened past 60. I'd listened to the whole replay, every second of it. And then I'd been so focused on having something the county couldn't argue with that I'd exported the audio to a thumb drive and handed the repeater a clean copy of my voice. Every question I'd asked, every acknowledgement, every word I'd said during that call, crisp and uninterrupted. I'd basically gift-wrapped it. And then I'd opened the cabinet, which was apparently the one thing it had been working toward all night, and the handset was sitting there with its earpiece aimed at me, and something was breathing through it and waiting for me to speak. That's the trap. I understood it now. If I said anything, one word, just hello, just a sound, it had a live feed. My voice in real time to layer over what it already had. I didn't know what that combination produced, and I didn't want to find out. I kept my mouth shut. I reached over to the desk and grabbed my trainee headset and put it on, both ears covered. I figured if audio was coming, better it came straight into my ears than into the open room. Containment. I'm not sure that was right. It felt right. Through the headset, I caught the normal background hiss of the active cue. Then underneath it, the handset on the shelf started making words. My name. First and last. Owen Martin. Calm, flat. The same neutral tone I use when I'm reading back a caller's information to confirm it. I'd heard recordings of myself before, the way you hear your own voicemail and think that doesn't sound like me at all. But this was different because it was accurate. It sounded more like me than I sound to myself, like someone had studied the recordings and corrected for the parts I usually miss. After my name, a pause, then one word. Confirm. That was it. Just the one. The LED blinked. The handset breathed. Shane's screen still showed my number ringing. The console speaker clicked again, softer. I didn't say anything. My whole thing under pressure. Donna had mentioned it during the first week, said it like it was a compliment. Is that I go quiet. I ask what I need to ask, and then I stop talking, and I listen. It's not a strategy. I just don't have a lot to say when things get bad. Turns out that's useful when something is using your own voice to ask you to verify that you exist. The handset said my name again. Same inflection, same pause, same word after. I still didn't answer. My eyes had moved to the back wall of the cabinet. There was a toggle switch mounted to the metal panel, gray housing, standard utility box style. The handle was in the on position. A label above it, hand-printed in black marker, trunk out. That was the breaker, the one Sutton had mentioned, the one that could cut the outside trunk lines. The handset said my name a third time. I reached in past the handset, keeping my arm flat against the shelf edge so I didn't knock anything over, and I got my hand around the breaker handle. It was warm, too. I didn't flip it yet. I held it and waited. The handset kept running the loop. Name, pause, confirm. Steady and patient, like it had nowhere to be. Maybe it didn't. I didn't know how any of this worked. Not really. I just knew the LED was blinking and the thumb drive was warm and Shane's screen still showed my phone calling in from my own pocket, and I was holding a breaker that Sutton had said could cut every outside line in the building. I kept my hand on it. I flipped it. The sound was just a click. Small and mechanical, nothing dramatic. Every screen on my console dropped to a static gray for half a second and then came back. The phones went silent. Not quieter. Silent. The constant background noise of the queue, the little audio blips from incoming calls, the low hum of the trunk lines cycling. Gone. The room felt different immediately. Smaller, maybe, or just more like a room. The LED went dark. The handset kind of sagged sideways on the shelf. And then the tape came out. A clump of black magnetic tape, like what you'd pull from a cassette that got chewed up in a player, pushed out from the earpiece and the speaker grill and landed in a loose pile on the shelf. It moved for a second, just a slight curl at the edge. Then it stopped. That was it. Just stopped. I stood there looking at it. I didn't touch it. I heard Sutton before I saw him. Heavy footsteps coming fast across the floor, which was unusual because Sutton never moved fast. He came around the row of consoles and saw the cabinet open and me standing in front of it with my hand still on the breaker handle. He didn't say anything at first. He looked at the tape on the shelf. He looked at the LED. Then he reached past me and pulled the cabinet door shut and ran the latch. "Step back," he said. I stepped back. He pulled a key from his belt. Not his key ring, a separate one on a short chain, and locked it. 2 turns. He tried the latch anyway after that, just to check. It held. He looked at me for a second. Not angry, not relieved exactly. Something in between that didn't have a clean name. "You flipped it," he said. "Yeah." He nodded once. "Okay." That was the whole conversation. He turned and walked back toward the supervisor station and got on his radio, talking low, his back to the room. I heard him say "contained" once. I didn't catch the rest. Shane was still at his console. His screen had cleared. No incoming call from my number, no active queue, nothing. Just sitting there. He glanced at me and I shrugged and he turned back to his screen. I think that was the most we'd communicated all shift. Donna appeared at my shoulder about 2 minutes later. She had her access lanyard in one hand and her headset already off. "Let's go," she said. Not how are you or what happened or explain the cabinet. Just that. I grabbed my jacket off the back of the chair, checked my pocket twice. Thumb drive still there. We walked to the back of the room, past the server rack and the break area with its ancient Mr. Coffee and the folding table nobody sat at, and out through a door I hadn't used before. Side exit. No badge reader on this one. Just a crash bar. It opened onto a narrow concrete walkway along the side of the building. Outside it was light. Not bright yet. The sun was up but low, and everything had that flat gray-blue color early morning gets before it decides what kind of day it's going to be. Cold enough that my jacket wasn't enough, but I didn't care that much. Donna walked me around to the main parking lot without saying anything. I wasn't sure if she was being professional or if she just didn't have words for it. Probably both. That seemed like her. There was a dark blue Ford Expedition parked sideways across 2 spots near the lot entrance, which seemed like a choice. 2 people standing next to it, a man and a woman, both in navy windbreakers, both with lanyards. I read the letters on the jackets before I read the credentials. DHS. I figured that tracked. The man was big, square-shouldered, iron-gray hair, buzzed close, heavy jaw, deep lines at the corners of his mouth. He watched us walk over without changing his expression at all. The woman was a little shorter, auburn hair tied back tight, a faint scar across the bridge of her nose. She'd been watching the lot entrance, and she clocked us immediately when we came around the corner, Donna stopped a few feet from them. "This is Owen Martin," she said. The man looked at me. "Roberts," he said. "This is Garcia." Didn't gesture to his partner. Didn't offer a hand. Garcia gave me a short nod. "Mr. Martin, we need the drive." I had my hand in my pocket already. I pulled it out and held it for a second. Plain black SanDisk, 8 gigabytes, the kind you buy in a 3-pack at Target. I'd had it on my keychain for 2 years. Little scuff on one corner from where I'd dropped it in a parking lot once. I'd used it for work schedules and a PDF of my lease, and now apparently this. I gave it to Garcia. She took it with 2 fingers and dropped it into a small evidence bag she had ready, sealed it, initialed the seal. Roberts was already writing something on a clipboard. I didn't ask what. "Is there anything else?" Donna said. Roberts looked up. "No, he's clear." Said it like he was reading from a list. Garcia looked at me. "The repeater is contained," she said, and she said it carefully, like she wanted me to actually hear each word. "As long as the breaker stays off and the tapes are destroyed, it stays contained. You should know that." "Okay," I said. "You did the right thing." Brief pause. "Not opening it would have been better. But what you did after, that was correct." I didn't say anything to that. I wasn't sure if it was a compliment or a note in a file. Probably both. Roberts capped his pen. "Your employment contract is being terminated this morning. Documentation by email. There's a non-disclosure agreement included. Standard form." I asked if I had to sign it right now. "No," he said. 10 business days. That was it. Donna walked me to my car, a 2009 Civic with a cracked corner on the front bumper, and stopped at the driver's door. "Get some sleep," she said. "Yeah." She started to turn and then didn't. "You did fine, Owen." I didn't know what to say to that either. I said thanks. She walked back toward the building and I got in. The drive home took about 15 minutes. I went down London Road along the lake, which I didn't have to. It was a few minutes longer than cutting through downtown. But I wanted the water on one side and not much on the other. The lake was dark and flat and wide. A couple of early joggers on the path. A delivery truck parked outside a coffee place that wasn't open yet. I got home, took off my boots inside the door, and lay down on top of my bed without changing. I was asleep in about 3 minutes. I know because I looked at my phone and it said 6:41, and then I don't remember anything until it said 4:52 in the afternoon. 10 straight hours. I hadn't done that since college. No dreams I could hold on to. Just dark, and then not dark. I lay there for a while staring at the ceiling. My boots were by the door. My jacket was on the floor where I'd dropped it. The thumb drive was gone. I'd handed it to Garcia. But my keychain was still on the counter, and the little silver carabiner clip that had held the drive was there, open, clipped to nothing. I ran through it once, the call, the frozen timer, the recording with my voice that wasn't quite my voice, the clock that said 1:47 when it should have been 5:12, the cabinet and the tape and the LED and the breaker, the handset saying my name in my own voice, asking me to confirm. I hadn't confirmed. I'd kept my mouth shut and flipped the switch. My name was mine. That sounds like a dumb thing to be relieved about, but it's the thing that stuck. The repeater had my voice on that drive. It had the sample, the cadence, everything it needed. What it didn't have was me saying, "Yes, this is Owen. I'm here. Go ahead." It had asked 3 times. I hadn't answered once. I sat up and ordered a pizza from Domino's because it was 5 in the afternoon, and I hadn't eaten in 12 hours, and they were the only place I could get delivered to my block without a minimum order. I ate half of it standing over the kitchen counter and put the rest in the fridge. The NDA was probably in my email already. I'd sign it. There wasn't much to tell anyone anyway, and nothing I could prove now that the drive was gone. I'd been a temp dispatcher for 2 weeks. I'd lost the job in one night. The paperwork would say contract end and nothing else. I was still Owen Martin. 29, 511, formerly of the warehouse, briefly of the overnight floor. I knew my own name. The line was dead. I went back to bed.